She thought she was logging into a job interview, but instead she entered a stranger's world, one built on silence, grief, and secrets. What began as an accident turned into something deeper. But what happens when the man she trusted turns out to be the one who could change everything? Or break her heart? If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The alarm buzzed for the second time, but Dale stayed still under her blanket. She stared at the ceiling, her heart heavy. It was another day of job searching, another day of hoping for something better. She finally reached over and turned off the alarm. There was no use pretending she could sleep through it. In the kitchen, the smell of toast and coffee welcomed her. Her best friend and roommate, Jessa, was already dressed and scrolling through her phone. "Morning," Jessa said, pouring Marin a mug of coffee. "Big interview today, right?" Marin nodded, rubbing her eyes. "Yeah, it's with Stonefield. Publishing, entry-level editing assistant. You've got this," Jessa said with a small smile. "They'd be lucky to have you." Marin took the coffee and tried to smile back. She wanted to believe Jessa, but part of her was already bracing for disappointment. After a quick shower, Marin stood in front of the mirror. She had one outfit that looked professional. A soft gray blazer, a white blouse, and a skirt that had started to fray at the hem. She brushed her hair, tied it back, and practiced her introduction. "Hi, I'm Marin Dale. I've always loved books. They helped me through hard times and inspired me to become an editor." She sighed. It sounded stiff and too rehearsed, but it was all she had. By 2 o'clock, she was ready. Her laptop sat open on the desk in her small bedroom. The meeting link was already loaded. The interview was at 2:30, but she had read that arriving early made a good impression. Her hands shook as she checked her camera and smoothed her blouse. She clicked the link. A spinning circle appeared, then a message. Waiting for host to join. Marin took a deep breath. She stared at her own face on the screen, trying to calm the nerves. Finally, the screen changed. A man appeared, sitting in a room with soft lighting and bookshelves in the background. He had kind eyes, a little tired, and wore a simple button-up shirt. "You're early," he said, his voice calm and warm. Marin gave a nervous smile. "I wanted to be prepared." The man nodded. "That's rare these days. Most people arrive right at the last second." Marin waited for him to introduce himself. Usually, interviewers started by explaining their role, but he didn't. Instead, he asked, "How are you feeling today, really?" The question caught her off guard. Honestly, I'm nervous. This job means a lot to me." "No need to be nervous," he said gently. "This isn't quite what you think it is." Marin blinked. "Excuse me?" "Tell me something," he continued. "What brought you here? Not the answer you rehearsed, the real reason." Marin looked down at her notes, confused. This wasn't any format she had prepared for. Still, something about his voice made her answer. "I've always loved books," she said slowly. "I studied literature in college. I want to work in publishing to help stories reach the world, but it's been hard. I've been stuck in jobs that don't mean anything to me. I'm tired of feeling behind." He listened quietly, his expression soft. "I understand," he said. "The world doesn't always open its doors when we expect it to." Marin looked closely at his screen. There was no company logo, no office background. It just looked like a simple room. Suddenly, a wave of embarrassment hit her. "Wait," she said, her cheeks turning red. This isn't the interview, is it?" He shook his head. "No, it's not." Marin covered her face. "Oh my gosh. I clicked the wrong link. I am so sorry." "Don't be," he said quickly. "You're not interrupting. In fact, maybe you were meant to be here." Marin peeked through her fingers. "What is this meeting?" "It's a small online support group," he explained, "for people dealing with grief and finding their way again." "And I just barged in talking about job interviews," she muttered. "I should go." He leaned forward. "Or maybe you should stay." Marin hesitated. "Why?" "Because maybe the universe had a different plan for you today." She let her hands drop and looked at him. He seemed sincere, not strange, just open. "What's your name?" "Lucas," he replied. "Just Lucas." "I'm Marin." They smiled at each other. It was strange, yet comforting. "So, what kind of support group is this?" she asked. "Mostly people who have lost someone," Lucas said quietly. "I lost my brother 2 years ago." "I'm sorry," Marin said. "Thank you. It's been a journey." The silence that followed wasn't awkward, it was gentle. Lucas glanced at the clock. "When is your actual interview?" Marin checked her email. Her eyes widened. "It's tomorrow, I got the days mixed up." Lucas smiled. "Well, consider this a practice round." Marin laughed, the tension finally easing. "Some practice, crashing a stranger's support group." "You handled it well." They continued talking. Marin didn't know why she stayed, but something about Lucas made her want to keep the conversation going. By the time they said goodbye, an hour had passed. Marin closed her laptop, feeling lighter than she had. In months, maybe it had been a mistake. Or maybe, just maybe, it had been exactly where she was meant to be. 3 days had passed since Marin accidentally joined the wrong video call. And yet, she couldn't stop thinking about it. Or about him. Lucas. After their strange and honest conversation, she had expected him to forget her. But the next evening, a message had appeared in her inbox. "I enjoyed our talk. If you'd like to chat again sometime, here's a link." Marin stared at the message for almost an hour before finally clicking it. Their second conversation was even easier than the first. They talked about books, their favorite childhood stories, and the feeling of being lost in your 20s. Marin found herself smiling more than she had in weeks. "So," Lucas asked during one of their calls, "how did you get into editing?" Marin leaned back in her chair. "I think it started when I was little. I used to fix my friends' stories. In school, they'd hand me a messy paragraph and I'd make it flow better. I didn't know then that it was called editing. I just knew it felt right." Lucas smiled. "Sounds like a gift." She shrugged. "I've been told it doesn't count as a real skill, not by employers anyway." Lucas didn't argue. He just listened. They talked often after that. Most evenings after Marin's grocery store shift, she'd come home, pour tea, and log in. Lucas was always there, waiting. Each call was like a breath of fresh air. She felt seen, understood. Still, Lucas didn't talk much about his own life. When she asked where he worked, he'd say, "I work with books too," and change the subject. Once, Marin joked, "Are you secretly famous or something?" Lucas laughed, but his eyes grew distant. "Hardly, just someone trying to find his place in the world." Then, one afternoon, Marin received an unexpected email. "Dear Marin, we'd like to invite you for an interview at Ashland Books." Ashland Books. She had heard of them. Small but respected. She didn't remember applying, but the message said she'd been recommended by someone who admired her recent work at the literary magazine. Heart racing, she accepted the interview. That evening, she mentioned it to Lucas during their call. "Ashland Books?" he repeated, his tone unreadable. "That's a great opportunity." "Yeah," Marin said, watching him. "They said someone recommended me. No idea who." Lucas didn't respond right away. Then he smiled. "Well, whoever it was has good taste." The next morning, Marin arrived early at Ashland's downtown office. The building was modern, with clean glass doors and shelves lined with books inside. Cheerful woman from HR greeted her. "We're so excited to meet you, we think you'll be a great fit." As they walked, the woman spoke proudly about Ashland's history. The company started small, with 2 brothers. Now it's run by one of them, Lucas Renner. Marin froze. "Lucas?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes," the woman said, smiling. "He's brilliant but very private. Not many people see him around here. He likes to stay out of the spotlight." They passed a wall of framed photographs. Marin's eyes stopped on one in particular. There he was. Lucas. Same gentle eyes. Same soft smile. Except now he was wearing a suit standing beside a younger version of himself. His brother, perhaps. Marin's stomach dropped. Lucas Renner was the founder and CEO of Ashland Books. She had spent weeks talking to him, sharing her fears, her hopes, her struggles, thinking he was just some quiet man with a love for books. He had never told her. Without a word, Marin turned and walked back toward the lobby. The HR woman called after her, but she didn't stop. Her heart was pounding. Her thoughts were spinning. Once outside, she sat on a bench and stared at the building. Why hadn't he told her? Back at home, Jessa found Marin pacing the living room. What happened? She asked. Marin told her everything. Jessa listened, wide-eyed. Wait, the Lucas you've been talking to, is the Lucas Renner? Marin nodded. He knew who I was. He never said a word. Her phone buzzed. A message from Lucas. I owe you the truth. Please let me explain. She didn't reply. That night another message came. You were never a project. I recommended you because I believe in you, not because I felt sorry. Still, she said nothing, until the next day. A package arrived at her door. Inside was a manuscript titled The Quiet Between Storms, written by Lucas Renner. A note was clipped to the cover. Marin, this is my story. It's everything I couldn't say out loud. If you still want the truth, it's in these pages. She stared at the pages in her hands, unsure whether to open them, but she knew deep down she would. Not yet, but soon. Because despite the hurt, part of her still remembered the man behind the screen, the one who listened, the one who made her feel like she mattered. And maybe, just maybe, she needed to hear his side too. Marin sat on her bed with the manuscript in her lap. The title, The Quiet Between Storms, was written in neat, careful handwriting. The paper smelled like ink and something older like memory. She hadn't opened it yet. The note from Lucas was still clipped to the front. This is my story. It's everything I couldn't say out loud. If you still want the truth, it's in these pages. Marin ran her fingers over the cover. Part of her wanted to toss it aside, to stay angry. But another part, the part that had laughed with Lucas, shared quiet evenings talking about books and dreams, needed answers. She turned the first page. The opening lines hit her like a soft wind. Grief is a room with no windows. For a long time I lived there. Marin kept reading. Lucas wrote about his brother Elliot, how they had started Ashland Books together with nothing but second-hand furniture and a passion for stories. He wrote about how they stayed late in there, bookstore, dreaming up ideas, arguing about covers, laughing at bad titles. Then came the storm. A sailing trip meant to celebrate a successful book launch. Sudden winds. A wave too big. Lucas diving into the water, reaching for Elliot's hand, missing it by inches. Marin wiped a tear from her cheek. He wrote about the silence that followed, about not being able to walk past the bookstore without hearing Elliot's voice, about the guilt, the therapy, the months where he couldn't get out of bed. Then about the group. A stranger once told me that words heal, so I built a space where words could be spoken without fear. No names, no judgment, just voices in the dark, reaching for something steady. Marin felt her chest tighten, and then near the end he wrote about her. She appeared in the waiting room of my call, nervous and full of hope. She didn't know me, didn't recognize my name. It was the first time someone spoke to me without expecting anything. Just honesty. He described their talks. The way her voice calmed something inside him. The way she challenged him without knowing it. How he had looked forward to every call. For the first time in years, I felt seen, not as a company name or a brother left behind. Just me. Lucas. By the final page, Marin was crying. Not just because of what Lucas had written, but because of how true it all felt. The manuscript wasn't polished or fancy. It was raw, honest, and it sounded like the man she had come to know. The next morning, she didn't go to work. Instead, she walked to a quiet cafe near her apartment and sent Lucas a message. I read it. His reply came minutes later. Can we meet? No screens, no links, just us, Marin agreed. They met at a small park near the river. The air was cool and leaves danced across the path. Lucas was already there, sitting on a bench with a paperback in his hands. When he saw her, he stood up quickly. "Hi," he said, his voice quiet. "Hi," Maren replied. They looked at each other for a moment. Maren saw the nervousness in his eyes, the same eyes that had once appeared on her laptop screen. "Thank you for coming," Lucas said. Maren held up the manuscript. "I almost didn't," he nodded. "I understand." "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked. "From the beginning?" Lucas sighed. "At first I didn't know how. Then I didn't want to ruin it. Being just Lucas was peaceful. It had been a long time since someone spoke to me without knowing my last name. But you kept it going, even after I shared everything with you." "I know," he said, his voice heavy. "And I'm sorry. I was afraid. Afraid you'd see me differently. Afraid I'd lose the only real connection I'd had in years." Maren sat beside him. They both watched the river move slowly in the distance. "You recommended me for that interview, didn't you?" Lucas hesitated, then nodded. "I did, but only because you deserved it. Your writing, your insight. It's exactly what Ashland Books needs. I didn't do it out of pity." Maren was quiet. "You didn't need to hide who you were," she said finally. "I liked who you were already." Lucas looked at her. "Do you still?" Maren didn't answer right away. The truth was she didn't know. Things had changed, but one thing was still clear. She had seen something real in him. "I don't know what happens next," she said honestly, "but I think we need to take it one step at a time." Lucas smiled gently. "I can do that." They sat together for a while, not speaking, just sharing the silence. It wasn't awkward. It was full of questions but also possibility. As Maren stood to leave, Lucas reached into his coat pocket and handed her something small. It was a bookmark, made of leather, with her name pressed into it. "For the next chapter," he said. Maren took it, her fingers brushing his for a second longer than needed. "We'll see," she said. As she walked away, the bookmark clutched in her hand. Maren realized something important. Sometimes truth doesn't come all at once. Sometimes it arrives in pieces, on pages through pauses in the quiet between storms. And sometimes it's enough to begin again. A week had passed since Maren and Lucas met at the park. She still didn't have all the answers, but something inside her had shifted. She had read his words. She had heard his voice in person. And more than anything, she had felt the truth between them. Maren stood at the edge of her bed, holding the blue blazer she had almost thrown away last month. Today it felt different. Today she was walking into something she had always dreamed about, a real job in publishing. She buttoned her jacket and looked at herself in the mirror. Her nerves buzzed, but behind them was something stronger. Purpose. When she stepped off the elevator at Ashland Books, the air smelled of ink and new paper. Shelves filled the walls. People moved through the hallways with quiet focus. It felt like home already. Melinda from HR greeted her with a warm smile. "Welcome aboard, Maren. We're glad you're here." "Thank you," Maren replied, clutching her new work ID. They led her to her desk on the editorial floor. It wasn't fancy, just a small workspace by a window. But to Maren, it was everything. After years of feeling stuck, she was finally where she belonged. As the morning went on, Maren met other editors, assistants, and designers. Most were polite. A few looked at her with curiosity. She could sense the whispers. She knew some of them had seen the photo, the one of her and Lucas in the park. It had surfaced on a local blog 2 days ago. Nothing scandalous, just a quiet moment between two people, but it was enough to stir conversation. Still, Lucas had kept his word. He hadn't contacted her since the day at the park. He had given her space to choose. For herself. By lunchtime, Maren was reviewing her first manuscript, a middle-grade novel about friendship and change. She was halfway through when a quiet knock tapped on the side of her desk. She looked up to see Lucas standing there, dressed simply in a gray sweater and dark jeans. May I sit? He asked. Maren nodded. Lucas pulled up a chair and sat across from her. He held a small paper bag in his hands. I brought you something, he said, placing it on her desk. Maren opened the bag and laughed softly. Inside was a muffin and a cup of tea, her favorite blend, the one she always drank during their calls. Thank you, she said. Lucas leaned forward. How's your first day going? Good, she said honestly. A little overwhelming, but good. I'm glad, he replied. They sat in silence for a moment. I've been thinking, Lucas began, his voice steady but low. About everything. About how this started. I don't want you to ever feel like you were brought here because of me. I don't, Maren said. Not anymore. I know I earned this. Lucas smiled, the kind of smile that reaches the eyes. You did. So what now, she asked. Do we pretend nothing ever happened? Go back to just being co-workers? We don't have to pretend, Lucas said. But I don't want to pressure you into anything. Not a job. Not a relationship. Nothing. Maren looked at the tea in her hand. Then she looked at him. I don't want to pretend either, she said softly. But if we do this, and whatever this is, it has to be honest. Always, Lucas said. She smiled. Then maybe we can start with dinner. Lucas blinked, surprised. Dinner? After work, she said. Not as your editor, not as your employee, just as me. Just as Maren, he said with a grin. I'd like that. That evening, they met at a quiet Italian restaurant tucked between a bakery and a bookstore. It wasn't fancy, but it was full of warmth. Checked tablecloths, candlelight, the smell of garlic and herbs. They talked for hours. About books. About fears. About what it meant to begin again. Lucas told her more about Elliot. About the bookstore they once ran, now closed but still filled with memories. We always wanted to reopen it, Lucas said. But after the accident, I couldn't go back. Maybe it's time, Maren said gently. A month later they did. Together they reopened Elliot and Lucas's original bookshop. They painted the walls, restocked the shelves, and held a soft opening for local readers and writers. The store had new life just like Lucas, just like Maren. On the first day, Lucas surprised Maren with a framed quote behind the front counter. Some stories start with a mistake. Others begin when two lost people find the same page. Maren stood beside him, hand in hand, and smiled. She had found her chapter, not because of luck, not because of anyone else, but because she had shown up, spoken honestly, and taken a chance on something unexpected. And that, she realized, was the story worth telling, the second chapter.